All right, hello everybody. Well, we're going to go ahead and call this workshop to order. This is the workshop of January 24th, 2023. I'll remind everyone to please silence any electronic devices that you may have at this time. Scott, would you please call the roll for us?
Sure. Commissioner John Penny?
Here.
Commissioner Ben Cole?
Here.
Commissioner Dan C. Daniel?
Here.
Commissioner Roy Johnson?
Yes, here.
Mayor Chris Villa?
Here. Thank you very much. And so we're going to start today, it looks like, with the RV park stormwater retention. And I know we have our city engineer here, but I'm going to toss it over to Mr. Forte if you'd like to lead it off.
Yeah, following our last meeting, when I did the best I could at trying to explain the scenario, I invited Andrew to come here to explain the circumstances surrounding the stormwater calculations on the RV park there up at the Bishop's property. So Andrew will come up and he'll go through it, and the whole point of this is to help educate and inform all of us as to what the conditions are and what we may or may not be agreeing to, and whether or not Andrew has the ability, based on his professional opinion, to sign off on the stormwater portion of this permit.
What's the Wi-Fi password again?
It's,
Secret 1065.
You just told the whole world.
All capitals.
Is it on?
HH 1065.
Sorry, Joe.
COHH. Sorry, Joe.
So what we did is we just asked Andrew to come. He's your engineer. We didn't ask Zeb Cohen to come because I don't think there's a dispute in that. They all know what these numbers are, but it's Andrew's opinion as to what it means and what the outcome of this may be. So we'll let him come up and explain what he can. We'll put a calculation up on the screens that he sent us today, and then have some questions for him and see if you can find a comfortable place to be, and hopefully we'll reach a conclusion.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much.
You got the.
Are you putting something on the screen?
Turn it over to you.
All right. Welcome, Andrew. If you'd like to, just for the record, introduce yourself and who you are, and then the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Andrew Giannini with Mead and Hunt, retired engineer, but I'm here to help where I can. I am the final QA/QC on the review of the site plans. And when I came across these calculations kind of stuck out to me. And could you zoom into the top two tables there? On the right side, you'll see is Zev Cohen's compensating storage calculations. The one he's got highlighted there.
The lights on up here.
Oh, yeah.
It's so glaring, you can't see.
So
you, Scott.
just to let you know, compensating storage is when you're in a floodplain, and this site is in the floodplain. It's on the north side of Flomich there, just west of the railroad tracks. And it's in the floodplain. So any kind of filling in the floodplain, you have to compensate for it by digging out uplands that are not in the floodplain, okay? That's how you get your compensating storage. So their calculations on the right, this table on the right shows the existing calculations for the volume. So on the right, you'll see the volume in acre feet from 2.5 elevation to 5. So 2.5 is where they started, which is the seasonal high water table. And then 5 is the 100-year floodplain elevation. So they, in their existing calculations, they said, okay, we have 25.194 acre feet of storage in the pre-development condition. Okay, and they use the topography to calculate that out. And on the left side, I just confirmed that they did their calculations correctly. Okay, so if you go down to the next two tables, go to the right, you'll see that table there is the proposed volume. So you have, in the proposed volume, starting at 2.5 all the way to 5, you have 25.226 acre feet. So their calculations show that they are not filling the floodplain, basically. But then, so you start looking at, I start looking at elevation between 4 and 5. And you'll see, go to the left side of that spreadsheet and go down. So,
Read those.
yeah, that much better. Zoom out a little bit with that. It looks like the columns got changed. So, there you have your elevation, 2.5 to 5, and then you have the volumes in the existing and the volumes in the proposed. And you'll see that for each level, from 2.5 to 3, you have a certain amount of volume, then the 3 to 4, then the 4 to 5. But notice between 4 and 5, on the far right, the difference between the existing and the proposed, you're reducing the volume by 3.24 acre feet. So that kind of jumped out at me and said, it's not, it's not a good thing to reduce your floodplain volume. Although they are meeting basically engineering standards for our area. Most of the engineers start at the seasonal high water table and they go up to 100-year floodplain. But I, being a conservative engineer, I look at all the different levels, and that just stuck out to me, and I commented on it because I thought it needed to be brought to their attention. Because if that volume gets filled up to 4, after 4, you're down. You don't have the same amount of the volume that you need between 4 and 5, which could be a problem. But they are using industry standard, as they say. I could not find anywhere in writing where in FEMA or any other jurisdiction, where it tells you to start at estimated seasonal high water table to figure out your floodplain compensation. But that's what's been used around this area by engineers. So that's my explanation. Is there any questions about what I just went over?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
So basically, Andrew, we see the decrease from 4 to 5, but when we look at the whole category,
Yep.
it appears that they are retaining the required water, the 25.1933. They're actually proposing to retain 25.22625.
Yes.
So they're keeping what they got.
Yes.
Okay.
So what I need to understand is the elevation. So as Mr. Penny said, 2.5 to 3 to 4, and then to 5. So explain what that elevation of 5 is one more time. Is that the
5 is the 100-year floodplain.
100-year floodplain? And
Based on previous flood, studies, drainage studies,
okay.
where they've modeled and they've established that as the 100-year floodplain.
And 2.5 is the seasonal high water mark.
Right.
Okay. And with any developments that have come through here that maybe you have seen or maybe have not, typically do we use that seasonal high water mark?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
You had a
Is it
question?
feet? 2.5 feet?
Yes,
2.5 feet
based on the
above,
sea level.
2.5 feet above sea level?
Yes,
Up to 5 feet above sea level?
right.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Curry? Commissioner Curry?
Yes, so why are we not using the seasonal like the industry standard is?
Well, they are.
What,
They are using this industry standard.
okay, but why are you choosing not to?
Because in some of my experience, I've come across it's in a FEMA document somewhere, because I had a sheet that tells you should start at the 10-year floodplain elevation to start your floodplain compensating storage calculation.
But nobody does.
Nobody does, and it's not an edict. It's basically a suggestion by FEMA, but I could not put my hands on that document, no matter how far I looked.
Right.
Again, I couldn't find it again, but it's out there somewhere.
Is the 10-year floodplain the same as the 100-year, because you said that, or was it the 10-year high water mark?
10-year flood, the 10-year flood stage, which is,
Okay.
I
Flood
think it's like
stage.
7.5 inches of rainfall in
Okay.
24 hours is the 10-year. And then the 100-year is 13 inches in 24 hours, 13 inches of rainfall.
But are these mutually exclusive to the elevation that you're talking about here, the elevations compared to what it should be holding?
Are they mutually exclusive?
Meaning, we're dealing with a lot of different terms here, so
Yep.
I'm trying to figure out exactly, trying to figure out what it all means in relation to, in this instance, we're talking about elevation, correct?
Right.
We're not talking about the amount of rainfall.
Right,
And so then when we talk about, so we talk about the high water mark, the seasonal high water mark versus the 100-year, what did you call it? The 100-year
100-year floodplain.
Floodplain.
Right.
So what I'm trying to get at is, people say that we just had a 500-year flood, right?
Right.
With the hurricanes that came through. Doesn't mean it happens every 500 years,
No.
with the amount of rain that came down. So, look, bottom line is my concern is you are our city engineer and you are a professional. I'm not an engineer, obviously.
Okay.
And so I am relying on your wisdom to tell me what are the consequences if we continue to use the seasonal high water mark. Will that be flooding the neighborhoods that are adjoining to it? That is my concern as a policymaker.
Right.
If not, and what I'm hearing is that everybody's using the standard of the seasonal high water mark, and that's what this was based on, these
Right.
calculations. And so I'm trying to get a better handle on it, and so,
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think it's more of my conservative approach. As an engineer, I try to be conservative in everything I do, because what if, happens,
right.
And sometimes we can't avoid some of the things, like this past season. Everything I designed failed. Any kind of flood project that I designed, it failed because it was just way too much water.
Right.
But so, in my opinion, I think the whole industry needs to change, because what we're seeing with the seasonal high water happening in the river, our seas are rising, and we're seeing them on a full moon where the river gets high, and flood waters come into the city because the river's high. And that happens all the time when we have tropical storm season too. I mean, the seas get higher, and then you're not really at seasonal high water table when your hurricane starts. You're probably at 3 to 3.5 feet in inland without any rain.
Right.
So, in my opinion, I think all these jurisdictions need to take a better look at their floodplain compensating storage, because nowhere do you see where it tells you this is where you start your floodplain compensating storage calculations. It's just, you're just not seeing it.
I think he was waiting first, Vice Mayor.
So what I heard you say, Andrew, was that you weren't able to find any other municipality that uses any other level except for the seasonal high.
Well, I couldn't even find anything that said its seasonal high is where you started.
Okay.
I couldn't find it in writing.
So, being a layperson, and none of us have even taken one engineering class, I don't think, up here. To a layman, it seems like the seasonal high, how often is the seasonal high reset? And does FEMA set the seasonal high? Because if sea levels are rising, that would tell me that the seasonal high would rise too.
Yeah.
And so that's recalculated every 5 to 10 years, like a census maybe.
Yep.
Then that seasonal high seems like it should be correcting itself.
That's correct.
So how often do they set that seasonal high?
It's really not set by anybody except for, usually a geotechnical engineer will do borings on the site, and they'll establish it based on, the water table and based on the soil characteristics, based on the vegetation.
Okay.
So it's,
So each
set
site
by-
has a different seasonal high? Each site
yes.
could possibly have a different?
Yes, it could. Yeah, if you get, farther inland, your seasonal high gets higher. When you're closer to the river, it drops as the water table drops.
And
Oh, wait,
so-
Commissioner
Oh, I'm
Daniel was
sorry, I'm
waiting.
sorry, I'm sorry.
I just want to ask Andrew. We had 22 inches of rain in 48 hours. Could anything handle that kind of water, that much water in that little bit of time? Regardless of 5 feet, 2 feet?
No, no, that's an outlier.
It's like an anomaly. I mean, that's
Yeah,
just,
you-
so there's
Yeah,
nothing
you
really
can't-
that could have been done regardless of whether it was a 100-year, 10-year,
Yeah.
1 year, all that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, the industry they use the 100-year as the critical flood elevation.
Commissioner Curry?
Andrew, I respect you, and I would never want to take an engineering class. So,
Hold the microphone in front of you.
sorry. Just so I understand, the seasonal high water mark, as Commissioner Penny pointed out, could change
Yep. Over time.
over time. And the industry standard for Volusia County, because that's really the area I need to be worried about, is the area we're immediately in.
Right, right.
The industry standard is the seasonal high water mark. And I understand because you're being conservative, you chose to go with the 10-year instead.
Yeah,
And I can't disparage you for that. You're being conservative.
Sure.
So that's pretty much where we lie.
yes,
Okay. Thank you, Andrew.
you're welcome.
I just have one question.
Sir?
Yep.
It's kind of a simple question. How do you feel that the water table is now compared to 20 years ago?
I'd have to say it is higher.
Do you think the water table's higher than it was?
Yep. Well, I mean, water table dependent on the ocean and the river.
No, I'm talking about the water table below the ground right now, where the
Oh,
water is sink down to.
Yeah, it changes over the year, depending on the rainfall. So, I mean, it could be, if it's a wet year, the water table rises. If it's a dry year, the water table lowers.
So if you have the water table lower now, you're going to have less chance of flooding because the water can sink in the ground to the water table
Yeah.
quicker, right?
Yes.
Now, on my property, just for my property, say nothing else, which is still in Holly Hill, 20 years ago, the water table was like 18 feet. The last time I checked it, it was like 27 feet.
Okay.
So that tells me that you're going to have less flooding. Now, let me ask you another question. Would this have ever been brought up if we hadn't had this big flood we just had? Would you even have took notice of it, or did it flag this?
Yeah, that didn't have my effect on me.
Whatsoever.
Yeah, I've studied the city. I've done your stormwater master plan, and I know what kind of problems you have with flooding. I mean, probably a third of your city is in a floodplain.
Yeah, and a lot of it's to do with tide. where the
Yeah.
tide is, right?
Yep,
Please.
it does, a lot of it
So
does.
that had absolutely nothing to do with the flooding, but the thing about it is, say like if Bishop's Old Farm up there, which I've been around it for 50 years.
Yep,
You know, it's never really changed that much except for just a few weeks or months ago.
sure.
And if that whole entire place was a retention pond, would it have still flooded?
With this past storms? Oh, yeah, sure.
That's the only thing I've done.
Yeah, there's 20, if you had 20 inches of rain, yeah.
So, to me, I just don't feel like the city of Holly Hill should take a lead in changing everybody else's policy because we feel that one spot it had a flooding problem.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just don't agree. I mean, I work around engineers that do the same thing you do most every day because I have relatives in it, but,
Yeah.
and they tell me what's going on with it and all, but I have to check the water table for when you want to pump your well or do something like that. So
Yep.
to me, I just feel like if a water table is, say, 5 or 6 or 10 feet lower than it was 20 years ago, it looks to me like the water is soaking the ground faster to the water table.
Yeah,
That's to my point of view.
yeah, that makes sense.
Any other questions? Yeah, I have to say, Andrew, that I'm like you. I come down conservative on all things, and that is your job, is to try to not predict the future, but look at the facts and give us those facts. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate the conservative aspect to it. And I tend to agree with you that as we move forward, you know, the industry standards 40, 50 years ago were nothing like they are today, and is a lot of the reason why we have many of the problems. And as a commission, we all sit up here and we say often we have to think about the future and how what we are doing today is going to affect us further down the line. And so in that regard, I tend to come down exactly where you're coming down. And I think that my opinion is that we do need to take a look at maybe raising the standards to this, especially if the professionals are you obviously put in a lot of time, energy, and have a lot of knowledge in the subject, in which I don't. So I'm willing to look into that. On this project, it's really tough because we are moving forward in a lot of ways, and in some respects, I feel like if we were to, in the middle of this project, change the rules suddenly,
Right.
that they went through, and I understand they did their due diligence and did their calculations upon this, there may or may not, and that's up to our city attorney to say yes or no, that we may be legal ramifications
Sure.
to us in the middle of the ball game, switching up the rules, and I don't like when government does that. So with all of that being said, what I want to ask you is your professional opinion still that we need to change this policy now and get away from using the seasonal high water mark? Is that what your recommendation is to us as a body?
Yep. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
I think that due to things that are changing in our world, we need to be more conservative with things like floodplains, and I think looking at that, it's not going to change drastically, that elevation between 4 and 5. If you look at that 4 is what probably is their 10-year floodplain. So between 4 and 5, look at that elevation and compare it to pre, and make sure you have enough floodplain in there.
Okay.
Storage.
So on this particular project, at the 4 level, we're still, it's still, according to the numbers I saw here tonight, it's still under that,
Yeah.
meaning what's proposed.
Yes.
So, and that is around the 100-year storm. So that 5, what would that represent? Would that represent 500?
No, that's the 100-year floodplain.
The 5 is the 100-year?
100-year floodplain.
Okay, but the 4 is
It's about a 10-year
oh,
floodplain.
10, okay, 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the stage where if you had 7.5 inches of rainfall, that's where your your water level would get to.
Okay, I understand now. All right. I also want to ask if staff has any additional questions. I know that you've spoken. I see no questions from staff. Are there further questions from the commission at this time?
Well, I just want to, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, even using the seasonal high, I have to write that down, at the difference between 4 and 5, it's still a net zero. They still meet, they're still retaining their water. Even though they're losing capacity between 4 and 5, the overall site still has capacity. They need
Yeah,
0.19 and they got 0.22,
sure.
right?
Yep.
I guess it's not down, but they have excess capacity from the first two.
So then in this project specifically, we're looking at that, then overall,
Overall, they're fine.
right, overall,
Yeah, if you look at the total.
are we looking at that right? Are we reading that right?
Yeah, well, they're fine with their calculations using that, starting at the seasonal high water level. They're fine. But you got to look at the, in my opinion, that 4 to 5 is where they're reducing
So,
the volume. Between that elevation 4 and 5, they're reducing that volume by 3 acre feet, 3.24 acre feet.
Did you have anything more?
no, so, and the 5 is the 100-year flood, which is the 7.5 inches of rain in a 24-hour period.
Now, 5 is 100-year, which is 13 inches of rain.
Okay,
And
so
24
13 inches of rain in 24 hours.
Right.
And then anything over that, it's going to fail.
Yeah, yeah. You don't
But-
look at anything over that.
Right, okay.
Because anything over that, it would flood regardless.
Yep.
If the whole thing is.
Right, okay, right.
Okay, well, that's really great information, and
Thank you.
we really
welcome.
respect your opinion.
pleasure.
Thank you
Yeah.
for your
If there's-
advice.
Yeah, if
and
there's anything
for-
else I can do, let me know.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew.
And
Thank
and
you,
we're going to
Andrew.
talk with staff about this. Before you leave, I'd ask, stick around just in case another
Okay.
question comes up. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Before Andrew
Mr.
leaves-
Forte.
What happens next?
Yeah.
Does the permit get signed off? Do you sign off on the permit now, or what happens?
Well, it's totally up to the city commission. We brought this to your attention, and in the code, it does, there are provisions for them to do other analysis that proves that they're not causing flooding, such as possibly modeling the watershed with their pre and post conditions, and they could do that fairly easily. We do have a model that we developed when we did the stormwater master plan. They could take that model and they could do a pre and post model and show the stages in that area, whether it rises or not in the 100-year flood. And that's something that's in your code. It does talk about doing further analysis.
So
Ryan has something to add, Mr. Forte. Come up to the mic. Thank you.
Just had a question, Andrew. So if they were to do that, if they were to model it and compare pre and post, are you saying to do that one at the seasonal high water and then at the 10-year and compare them?
No, you would just model the 100-year storm. Just model the 100-year storm.
Based on the seasonal?
Yeah, you start the model at the seasonal high. It starts it at the seasonal high.
Okay.
Mr. Forte.
So my question is, if we go back to Zev Cohen and ask them to do further modeling, how long will that take? And what are we going to do with the results? If the results are favorable, we move forward. If the results are not favorable, what do we do?
Right, right.
Well,
Yeah, Vice Mayor.
Well, based on what I've seen here tonight, is that the numbers, I think both engineers agree that the numbers show that at up to the 100-year flood, they retain their water. I don't believe it's right for the city to impose any additional requirements on this applicant that no one else in Volusia County has any knowledge of ever being applied to any project.
Commissioner Curry?
And I had some questions answered that I had. One was from our city attorney on liability, and the next was, I wanted to know, if you remember from our last meeting, the seasonal high water mark, if that was the industry standard that is used in Volusia County by the various engineers. And the answer was yes, that's what's used. I appreciate Andrew's conservative, and that may be something that needs to be looked at sooner rather than later. But for this particular project, I am satisfied that we can let it go forward. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Daniel?
We're all gonna go around and see.
You can go ahead. You have something
Yeah,
to
I
say.
mean, obviously, our job is to look what, what's the impact for the city. From my understanding, if I'm not wrong, is that if we don't move forward tonight, that this could kill the project to a certain extent?
I don't know that directly, but that's what I've been told, is that, and that's why I'm trying to figure out what happens after tonight, because tomorrow morning, I'm going to get a phone call, and they're going to say, is the project approved? You know,
Right.
the only way the project gets approved is if Andrew signs
I
off on
understand
it.
that. I understand Andrew's conservative, I'm a conservative player myself, but
Right.
seeing and presenting it the way you did and seeing that they've kind of got to where, if not industry standards and then some, as we're talking 4s and 5s and all that stuff, I did kind of, how does this benefit the city, or, what's the impact, this and that? And so I just started doing some research. I was playing the numbers guy like you. With the $140 billion industry, which is the RV industry, with 680,000 jobs and $48 billion in wages, I figure the economic impact to our city is going to be a pretty valuable, and to squash the hopes and dreams of something on what could or couldn't happen to be, I'm thinking, all right, we're going to have 20 inches of rain. It's not going to matter. Like you said, it doesn't matter if you got 10-year, 100-year, or whatever. We kind of, I think what we should do, obviously, is put something in place that this isn't going to happen to us again. But at this point, I don't feel like it's being fair to pull the plug or cause any more, like you say, undue expense or time to the applicant now, so.
All right. And thank you, Commissioner Daniel. And I have a question for Scott, and I just have to say that I'm trying to look at this from a bigger standpoint of this particular project, even though that's why we're having this emergency meeting, because obviously what we decide to do could affect what's going on, and that's a big deal. And all of us up here very much want this RV park. We believe it would be great for the city of Holly Hill. So I don't think that's up for debate. So I hope my comments don't reflect on my support for that project, but I'm looking at this also, I think we have to look factually at the numbers, and I just don't want to go down a path of having our engineer telling us his professional opinion, and I feel uncomfortable overriding that opinion. I want to have that said, and so if the modeling comes back, I think the question is how do we move forward? And I believe I heard tonight is if this commission moves this forward, that then their engineer will have to do the modeling. And Mr. Forte proposed, what if it comes back to us and says, you know what, it's going to flood out this neighborhood? If that happens, I'm not comfortable saying, yes, I want this to move forward. In fact, I'm the opposite. I will not put one project over one house, two house, dozens of houses, or neighborhoods. I won't do it, and I understand what the project means for the city, so I don't want that to be I'm not talking bad about the project, but I think it's much bigger than the project. And so my question, though, is as we would move forward, if the modeling came back and told us that it wasn't good, and this commission decided that we would not move forward with that project, Scott, what are our legal ramifications here? What can you tell us on record to give us advice that if we had to not move forward with the project, meaning move forward with changing our policy here, we're kind of halfway through the game, so can you advise us legally?
Yeah, there's a couple things liability-wise you can look at with this, is first, establishing a stormwater policy in general. That's a policy decision that y'all get to make, and basically that is covered by sovereign immunity. There is no liability if you adopt a policy, but that ultimately causes flooding. If you adopt a policy, that's a policy-setting decision that you've made on what that policy is. If you don't implement the policy correctly, then you may expose yourself to liability. That's more of an operational type thing. So if you come up with a policy on how you want your stormwater to be developed, you can't sue local government over the fact that you don't like their policy. And the one that always pops up is, a decision to put up a stoplight or a stop sign at an intersection. You can't be sued over that decision. But if you put up a stop sign and then you allow trees to block the stop sign and it causes a wreck, you can be sued for that because that's operational. So it's almost like how you set your rules, you can't be liable for. But if you don't implement your rules appropriately, then you could have liability, depending. And there's a lot of sovereign immunity out there for local governments. So from the standpoint of establishing a stormwater system, the ability to come in and be sued because you didn't design a system that would sufficiently retain, you didn't have regulations in place that were strong enough to prevent a subdivision from flooding, you're not going to get sued for that. That's immunity. It's a policy decision. And so where I'm not crystal clear on this is if we have regulations in place that they can't meet, then I would go along with your line. So they got to meet our regulations. Then all of a sudden you're starting to you're getting to a different point. But I don't know that I've heard they can't meet the regulations. What I surmise listening to this is the entire county's regulations and maybe the state's regulations probably need to be reviewed and updated. There's a problem with all the regulations. Using the seasonal high water level may not be a good way to do that. Well, that's a policy decision. Are you going to change how our regulations are being regulations to how we calculate this? That's a policy decision. You get to make that policy decision. But depending on what your policy decision is, either way, you're not liable for it. You're not subject to liability. Now, if St. John's River Water Management District, I assume they also have regulations over this issue, they could adopt more stringent, and regardless of what we adopt, St. John's can adopt them, and they still have to comply with the more restrictive standard. So it's St. John's. So in terms of adopting and applying the regulations, I don't think you have any liability when you're adopting regulations. I don't know that you have a requirement to adopt any stormwater regulations. Just defer to St. John's. You could do that. But when you adopt them, once you put regulations in place, and then if you don't enforce them properly, you have a greater chance of being exposed to liability. Now, the next question is, we have a project that's in the process, and if we are changing our regulations to apply to this project, we may have issues with that. They've come in, they have applied in good faith. This wasn't something that was in the works. If these were regulations that we were in the process of amending and reviewing, Some cities will adopt a moratorium, say, well, no more building until we finish our regulations. But there are case law that says, if you're in the process of adopting something, you can hold off on a building permit till you finish adopting these regulations to put in place. But if there's no pending regulations, and they come in good faith and apply, there may be issues in that regard. But it kind of goes back to the first question, are they or are they not in compliance with our current regulations? That's really to me, the key question. If they're in compliance, then what we're talking about is changing a policy to change our requirements. That's one issue. If they're not in compliance with our current regulations, that's a totally different issue. And the one question that I thought of when I was looking at that is, there something unique about this property that made it stand out, that when pickleball was built, that didn't stand out? When Fountainhead was built, didn't stand out? Is there something unique about this property that caused this to have a greater flood issue than any other development, large development that has been approved by the city in the last few years? I didn't know if there's something unique about this property that was causing it, or is it just an overall concern that, look, we need to revamp, or at least consider looking at our regulations again? That's a policy decision that you need to make, but I think that policy decision should be made prospectively, not retroactively, would be kind of my opinion.
And we can't do it retroactively.
What's
But
that?
we can't do it retroactively, but do you mean retroactively in regards to this project?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that
Okay.
you would say,
Right.
we stop all development projects right now, and we're going to adopt new stormwater, and they're going to have to go back and revamp all
Policy,
their
yeah.
development projects to comply with it.
So it's your legal opinion that it would be wrong if we were to suddenly say, we're going to adopt this new regulation for our stormwater policy and then apply it to this specific development that's happening
Apply
currently?
it to any development.
Any development that's currently
That
happening,
has-
that came prior to us thinking of this and bringing it up?
And that has.
I tend to agree,
It's under
yeah.
construction right now.
Yeah,
Because we couldn't, if we're going to do it, we can't just apply it to this one.
right.
We'd have to go back and say, if we're going to change it, all right, everybody who has a building permit that has not been CO'd and finalized, we're going to have to change your stormwater.
Yeah.
And so it'd have to apply to everybody. But I think there's legal issues with doing that. I can't say that it is a regulatory taking of property, like inverse condemnation, because I don't know, to get to that level, the property has to have no economic viable use or negligible economic viable use. So I don't know what the change would be that would be contemplated, and then what impact that would have on the developability and therefore the value of the properties. That's a different question. I just don't have that information. But it could rise to that if we adopted something so stringent that no one could comply with, and their property was undevelopable and had no value, then somebody could assert that type of claim. But it may be worthy of looking at, but I think if you try to apply it to people who've already applied and received building permits, you're probably going to end up in litigation.
Okay.
So,
Scott,
That's what I needed
Is that
to
the reason why nobody seems to have anything in policy, like all these other cities and
I
everybody
have
else?
no idea.
I mean, it just seems like from what you just said, that it's kind of the safest way is to just let St. John's be the overall, and then kind of assume that the seasonal is okay, and then it's kind of a safe way to,
It could be, yeah. I mean, you let that's a very logical way to look at it, to say we'll let St. John's deal with stormwater. I'm not saying that's what we do or that's what we should do.
Scott, you really explained in all the details very well. And I think one thing you did bring up, that something pointed to this project besides, that didn't point pickleball or anything else. And I'm thinking about it, and the only thing I can see that would point to that is since we built that, and we started building this, we had that gigantic flooding. So it brought to attention a lot of people's flooding issues that we've had. And it just doesn't make any sense. I remember, I might be a little bit off, a little bit wrong, but that's how I remember in 1980, St. John's Water Management set a standard whenever you have commercial property, I think it's just commercial property, whatever water disperses off of buildings and things on the property has to be retained on your property. And they set the standards, I think it was 1980, you can check back and see, because I've seen so many people get involved in it. If St. John's Water Management set the policy for everyone, why do we need, just one small city here, need to change what they did? It just, to me, it just doesn't make any sense, you know?
Commissioner Curry?
Mr. Forte, now hearing more from Mr. Simpson than what him and I spoke about on the liability issue, and the fact that St. John's Water Management permitted this project as well, what is the next step? If we as a commission say, no, this project was clearly in the works, permits were issued, we need to let this project move forward, and then we can discuss what we want to do for future, what is the next step for that?
Well, that's the question I need answers to myself. So no permits have been issued yet. What Brian is waiting for to issue permits is for the full package to be reviewed and signed off. And right now, we're pending the city engineer's sign off on it. So the question is, will Andrew sign off on this project tomorrow as being acceptable? Or is he looking for more information before he's willing to sign off? I can't tell him to sign off.
I
on the
guess we
document.
need to
And I don't know if you can tell him to sign off.
ask Andrew what the next step is.
Right.
Sir, if you don't mind.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the commission has, they have the authority to override my comments. That's in my opinion. Like you said, they are complying with what industry standard is.
Right.
They are. And I just brought the attention to the reduction in the flood storage between 4 and 5 because it jumped out at me. And I being a conservative engineer, did not want to see further flooding in Holly Hill, which I believe will happen, but that's my opinion. So the commission has the right to override my
So
comments.
if this commission tonight voted to
vote.
say.
Can't vote.
We
Well, we
can't,
can't vote.
can't
We're in
take
a
action,
workshop.
yeah.
And you can have consensus, but you can't take a vote.
We could have a consensus.
Well, it is my understanding that St. John's and DEP have issued permits for this property.
St. John's has issued a permit, but they deal with quality and retention, not with floodplain.
Right, okay.
So with that being said, what I look at for this, I think that we need to look towards the future, and we need to look at this policy. It is brought to our attention, and hearing from our attorney this evening, I also feel that this project is moving forward, and that it would open us up to a ton of legal liability already, being that it was used at the industry standard, all the calculations that they were going off of and they did their due diligence on. And for that reason, I believe I would come down on this to say that I wouldn't apply that to this project because it is already currently in motion and already has permits from DEP and St. John's Water Management. So, and I think that I hear consensus on that. If I have an objection to that, please say so now.
I'd just like to make a comment.
Yeah.
I don't want to object. But I just want to,
So for the record, not an objection.
not an objection, I just want to clarify something Andrew said, that the commission has the right to overrule his opinion. And I don't think this commission is asking to overrule his opinion because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is that his opinion is that they meet the standards, the industry standards for this project is met using the seasonal high. So I don't want the front page of the News Journal to say, commission overrules city engineer. I believe we all agree that the project meets the industry standards set by the seasonal high. So we're not overruling, we're just choosing to use the industry standards for this project as we have for every other project. And as we know, every other project in Volusia County has been held to the same standard. We're not giving any special consideration to this project. We're not making
Nope.
any exceptions. We're not overruling anyone's professional opinion. We're applying the industry standards to this project.
All right, well said.
Well said.
Mr. Forte, do you have any extra input?
Direction. You know, that might have been
Yeah.
well said, but we still don't have commitment that the engineer is going to sign off. And what he's saying is he's got an opinion. It's no different than Scott having a legal opinion and you don't agree with it. It's not going to change his
So
opinion.
my problem with that, Mr. Forte, is that we're in a workshop setting and we cannot
You cannot vote.
vote and take action on
Right.
this. I believe you have consensus to move forward with.
So I need to understand, to move forward with what? Am I telling Brian to issue permits without the engineer's signature?
Based on our attorney's advice, this project should not be held to that standard that we did not have at the beginning of this process.
But would
That's
Andrew
what I'm
agree-
hearing.
Would Andrew agree with that? Can Andrew sign off with us hearing our consensus without taking formal action? I guess that's the question.
Yes, I would, based on this meeting, I would sign off saying it's acceptable to move forward.
Okay, so there we go.
That's what we need.
That's,
All right.
And in light, I would say, that maybe in the future, you need to look at, other policies
Yes, very soon.
with relation to the floodplain compensation.
agreed, sir. And thank
I
you for
agree.
bringing
welcome.
that to our attention.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Anything further on this, Mr. Forte?
I'm good now.
All right, thank you.
Well, you're
Now-
awful needy. You're not gonna be like that all night, are you?
I only had one question.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so now we will move on to number 3. This is the update to the capital improvements project list and legacy project changes. Number 1 is capital improvement projects. Mr. Forte, are you leading this off?
It's only $8 million. No big deal.
I'll get it started, then Antoine will probably come up and Antoine, you might want to sit down and, instead of standing. And what we want to do is go over, we've been working, every other week, we meet, Antoine, Steve, myself, Susan, and Michelle. We meet and we go over the capital improvement plan, and we keep track of what's going on and what's been spent and what the bids are coming in at. And due to price increases and delays on materials coming in, things are not moving as quickly as we had hoped. And I'm talking mostly about the legacy projects that we talked about before when we were going to actually hire ZHA to help us fulfill those. And then we found that ZHA was too expensive, so we reorganized the department, and Steve kind of became the project manager over these. But the number of projects that we think we can do, we're not going to be able to do. So, but I think the best thing we could do is we'll run through this project list the same way we would at one of our biweekly Wednesday meetings. And Antoine will just run down the list and show you where we are, what the status is, where there is funding available, where there's funding shortfalls, what we may delay, what we may replace, because we're going to replace some projects because priorities have changed. So I think the best thing we could do is kind of run down this. Certainly stop us if you have any questions, and we'll try to address them. And it's just, I've been meaning to give you a capital projects update anyway, but now it's just compounded with the problem of costs have gone up and equipment's hard to come by.
And so we have about 30 minutes, and is this a 30-minute presentation, give or take, or was it more like an hour? Okay, I'm seeing
Depends how many questions you ask.
head nods that it's probably about 30 minutes, so we're good to go. I just need to know how fast to move this
I'd
meeting.
like to do it in 5, if you can.
There we go, all right. If we have no questions, no guarantees. All right, thank you. So the floor is yours, Antoine.
Let's start with the first slide here. The Public Works Building, the small engine workshop, sewer garage, is being delivered on January 31st. We demolished the existing building and disposed of the steel in it. Actually, we sold it. And we'll be ready for the building to be delivered.
Now, as you look at these slides, just take note of what the projected estimated cost is versus what the
Yeah.
project
I went
budget.
from 60 to 210.
Wow.
Yeah, that's only a
We
shot.
haven't received this, hopefully we can build the interior with that leftover money. Fire station is moving forward. We are on schedule for the construction plans to hopefully to be ready by January or February, June or July of this year. FPL charging station, this is complete. We didn't have to do anything on it. We replaced this project with the landscaping at Pictona. Bulkhead, this is almost complete. Increase the sizing space, all concrete drive. Yes.
Hold on one second, Antoine. Vice Chair.
On the charging station?
Right.
When will that go live? Do we know?
I've been talking with them. They just recently, I'm not even,
I've seen people plugging into it and,
Oh, it's not working?
no.
it's waiting to be energized. It's on them. I email them every couple of weeks and find out what the status is. That most recently, do you know if they finished painting the green lines?
Yes.
Okay, so the green lines are painted. It's ready to be energized. I don't know what they're waiting to flip that
I
switch.
thought it was because I saw people.
People plug into it. It's not-
And then they get back in and
I
brag.
thought it was.
It's not energized.
I will, I'll get a firm answer and email it out to all of you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, you want to continue with the
Sure.
general fund?
Okay. So the next one up is the southern bulkhead at Sunrise Park. That program's actually doing very well. They should be done with work within a month, and then we'll have to let the grass establish, so we'll have the park open probably the end of February. It is slightly over budget when you include CEI and design. I think it came in around 764, right in there. Conversion of the old fire station, this obviously won't happen until the new fire station is being built. We'll put it out for design when it's actually actively under construction. Riverside Park seawall, you had recently approved a contract with Dredging and Marine Consultants, so they're just starting to do work on that. They're going to need to do an assessment and figure out whether or not the seawall can be repaired or if it needs to be replaced, and the dollar amount will be drastic between those two. And we'll see what they come back with. I'm a little bit concerned about that one.
Steve, does Marina Grand have the same issues we do? I'm assuming on their seawall?
They do.
Yes, we've been trying to partner with them, going through DMC for our marine consulting engineers, and I haven't gotten firm commitment back from them. The bid that we got from DMC is contingent upon a partnership with Marina Grand. That price may go up if they don't join with us.
The Centennial Park bridge demolition, we have the permit, we have the purchase order. I'm just waiting on the scheduling from the contractor, but that should happen within the next month or two. In Sunrise Park improvements, that one, I am going to need some more direction from commission about what's, kind of what you're looking at for that project. I have some thoughts that I can share. I know irrigating the park, putting down one type of sod. Right now, we have 3 different types of grass over there.
So for the sake of time, we might want to do a separate work session just on Sunrise Park improvements, but we've got $650,000 budgeted for that, which we may need to dip into for other projects, but we'll go finish going through.
Yep, okay. Then let's just keep rolling through then.
No fire truck?
Okay, fire truck, that's a standard capital project, and we put money in the budget every year for that, and we will continue to do so.
So that truck is set to be delivered in the late summer or early fall now. It's been pumped out, and I think part of what's happened is some cities are using their ARPA funds to purchase fire equipment. So we got ours in at a very good price. Why they're not building ours to get it off the line, I don't know, but it was supposed to come out in February, then it was coming out in the spring, now it's going to be the summer. But what we'd like to do with that is continue to put, say, $50,000 a year in a fire apparatus replacement fund, so that in 10 years, there's at least $500,000 in that fund, so we'll continue to do that.
Okay.
Tyler implementation, our Energov is up. EAM, which is the asset management, will go live at the end of February. And then the permitting end, we're anticipating July, going live. AC replacements for 22, I'm sorry?
Veterans.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah, the monument, I've emailed them again last week to find out what the status is. I'm waiting on a final, proof, thank you. A final proof, because I had made some changes. There were some errors on the first one, so we made some changes. And I'm waiting for that final, and that's it.
Joe, what was the final layout?
You saw the final layout. What I asked him to do was make the fonts a little bit smaller so that there'd be a little bit more room on the center stone for more names if need be.
Well, you asked me, or I guess asked everybody.
No, this is the Veterans Memorial Monument, not the plaques that you're.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that's right.
On the AC replacements, this is annual projects, so the 22 is getting closed out. Everything's completed from last year. And we're on our way this year. What we're doing is, as the year progresses, we're waiting for things that go bump in the night, and as it gets towards the end of the fiscal year, then we'll start looking at preventative maintenance, and that's the same with the YMCA.
Speaking of the YMCA, did that whole roof situation get no?
Leaked last week.
Oh, man.
No. With the roof, they got the leak on the flat roof fixed. However, the drainage system was built up instead of built down. So they failed their inspection, as they should have, and they were told to come out and fix that so that gravity works in their favor. So they did. But in the process of doing so, the seal of the roof, it looks like they got another leak coming in. So we saw some water coming in. I want to make sure that that is from fresh rain and not just water that was already in there, finding the lowest spot. So right now, we're supposed to get a little bit of rain this week. If we don't, I'm going to have them do another wet test. And before
Get the
we
fire
sign
truck
off
out
on it, we'll put water up there and make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
We haven't paid them anything yet. We're just
Good.
kind of holding until.
Good for you.
it's okay.
Thank you for holding their feet to the fire. Yeah.
Are we there? Okay. The force main replacement under the canal is on hold. We're assessing priorities. We might need that money for something else, but we're still in the assessing mode. Lime silo, we're awaiting delivery of parts and the installation of those parts. Everything has got delayed because we added other material to it. Clear well and high service pump control panels. That project is moving forward. We're gonna bid it here in February, put it out to bid, and hopefully to start construction sometime in June or July. Sand filter rehab is being delayed. We put it out to bid, and the bid came in at $2.3 million.
Wow.
Wow.
And so what we're changing, what we're doing is we're going to change it to media replacement. Should be a lot cheaper, but also we'd like to use some of those funds to replace the upgrade the pumps on lift station 11. Lift station 11 is the most troublesome lift station in the system, plus it's our biggest. So we'd like to upgrade the pumps for them, and then do a smoke testing on the whole system that services the southwest corner of the city.
And that's real important. There's actually a change order on my desk waiting to be signed, which I'll probably sign tomorrow, I think $200,000.
Great.
To do the smoke testing. And what's important about that is this is going to also include the Vineyards property and all the all the sewage that comes up through that system into lift station 11. So this is the best way that we can find out if there's capacity, if there's breaches, if there's infiltration. So I think it's a smart decision on Antoine to go in that direction and really try to uncover what issues that may be leading up to lift station 11.
That's where we have most of the complaints during the storm, correct?
Yeah.
Right. And that's why, actually, we're also requesting a purchase of a mobile pump dedicated to sewer, because we compete with stormwater during heavy rains, and we're doing something that we're not supposed to, which is mixing stormwater and sewer at the same time with the same pumps. So we dedicate this pump to be a bypass pump that we can use it only for sewer. Sewer manhole evaluation and rehabilitations, they've submitted the report. The report came back, actually, the consultant said, we're not that bad compared to other cities, so we're doing pretty good. The only problem is we have some manholes that got probably covered over by pavement or dirt over the years, and we will be trying to locate them. Staff or city staff will try to locate them and to be able to evaluate them. Automatic sampling stations, we're installing about 6 a year, and we installed already 6 for this year, and they're working well, and we'll evaluate them, and next year we'll add another 6. Water and wastewater generator replacement is on hold. I think I'm going to identify some projects that we can use that money for other projects, because the water and wastewater generator now is in very good condition, doesn't have that many hours, and it's a CAT, so it's pretty reliable. So we keep maintaining it, and it keeps performing at maximum. Rehab lift station 4, lift station 4, which is the big station at Pictona. That's the biggest station in the city. We will be bidding this project also sometime in February. This is demolishing the building and changing the whole layout of the lift station to be underground, and we're going to surround it with a fence because it has a generator, and we're replacing the generator with a bypass pump that's permanently stationed there, and with the sound control, so it'll be kind of quiet. Put fence around it, put some landscaping around it, so to make it look or fit with Pictona.
Is that, are you confident in that 300,000? It doesn't seem like enough.
No, it's not going to be enough. That's the answer right now. So that's why the generator might go somewhere else and all that stuff. So we're trying to evaluate, Susan and I keep working on these budgets based on what are we going to do. Compliance with SB 64, we're doing some projects on that. We're doing a project at the golf course. We have to redo a monitoring well, and also we are planning on irrigating Centennial Park, all of it, with the reclaimed water. So that goes towards that credit. It's not going to cost 1.785 million, but we're also replacing the reclaimed water line that's running aerially along the canal with underground. So
wait, so you think that it'll come in under the 1.7?
yeah, no, the 1.7 million is the multiple projects that we are doing.
Right,
This is
okay.
one of the first ones.
And this is the full plan to get us in compliance by 2026,
Compliance.
correct?
By the time we're due, hopefully we'll be in compliance, because the list is too big.
And there's no state help with these funds, correct?
Not now. We can always try for
Okay.
grants and see what we can do.
Mr. Forte, can you remember this? And I want to bring it up to our lobbyist to discuss that. Thank you.
Antoine, along the reclaim, and we were talking about Sunrise Park.
Not Sunrise,
I'm-
Centennial.
No, but we were talking about
Oh,
earlier, Steve wants more
Oh,
direction
okay,
for
okay,
Sunrise
yeah.
Park. Is there reclaimed water there?
No.
Is it cost effective to do it?
No. We have a well, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
We have a well
in
there.
place, and getting those pipes down there will be very, very expensive.
You know, the ongoing problem, and I know we'll get into this in a separate work session, but the ongoing problem with irrigation in the park is people tend to want to practice their golf swing on the heads. And we end up breaking heads, and, you know, it becomes a maintenance issue, and then it gets so broken that it gets turned off, and then we have a situation that we have right now.
But there is a well on.
Okay.
on the-
Thank you.
Sunrise.
Bill Murray.
The water main replacements, I don't know if we're gonna be able to go beyond Third Street. Third Street right now is,
Lush.
is one of our major water main replacement. We had it under design for the south side, but now we're doing the north side also to include it all as one. That money is not gonna be enough, but we'll worry about it when the plans are complete. All right. The chlorine hoist at the water plant has been complete, almost 98% complete. We're waiting for final inspection and we'll be ready to go. Lift station number 5 is already complete and functional. We're waiting on some closeouts. Lift station 19, what we're doing is we're awarded the contract already. We have met with the contractor. We're exchanging. We had a idea, instead of putting a generator, we put in a bypass pump, and we negotiated with Danis to reduce their bid by the cost of the bypass pump. Bypass pump is local, which is Thompson Pumps, and Thompson Pumps, actually, their contract says warranty is for 2 years. We were able to negotiate a 5-year warranty from them, because apparently they're close to us and they want to do a business with us.
And these are diesel pumps, right?
Diesel pumps, yes. Diesel bypass pump with silencer. Lift station number 20 was the same thing, but this one doesn't have a bypass pump, so it's on track to be to go to construction here in the next 2 or 3 months. Lift station 11. Lift station 11. Oh yeah, this is the reason we have it here. The construction of the pipe with the manifold system, the pipes that's leading out of the lift station is under construction. Hopefully will be done by end of this week, and that should be finished. Third BTU, we are on track to be bid sometime in June, July, and we are trying to get, actually the consultants is trying to get us a little bit more money through a grant through St. John's. Hopefully we'll be able to do be able to get the grant so we can make sure that we get it done. Actually, the scope came in, the estimate on when they got about 60% plans was 9.8 million, and we said, no, we have to reduce it. So we reduced it, the scope, we reduced the scope, not the building itself. We just had things on the side that we said we'll do it some other time. Right now, we just need to build it. Aerator tank seal and aerator tank coating is just small stuff that we're not worried about it right now. Disc flow pumps are on order. Softener number 2 drive shaft still on waiting on parts and for the contractor to be able to come down and meet it and finish it. Stormwater Mirage pump is on hold. On hold because it's gonna be resolved here in next month, 6 weeks. I might have to hire a surveyor to draw a easement that is required. The easement was supposed to be part of their, did I change it? Replacements, no, okay, yeah. The Mirage, the easement was supposed to be part of their plat. The plat hasn't been filed because they have not submitted the final plans. So it's being delayed. So I might ask, and they said, if you want to write an easement, we'll sign it. That's no problem. But we have to get Meyer to prepare the easement. I'm not sure yet, but I'll know here in the next few weeks. The duck bills, we put it out to bid and came in about $250,000 more than the estimate, than the budget and the estimate. The estimate was 440, it came in at $640,000.
And that's one of the projects we're going after appropriation funding.
Yeah.
Right.
We're asking the grant.
Yep.
Hopefully, if the grant comes through, we should be able to go to construction. Pipelining, we're holding because I think the Mirage Pond is going to come in higher than what's in the budget, but we'll do what we can during until then. Solid waste annual paving program. We have the bids out for this year. We received one bid from Halifax, and we're waiting. Thursday, they promised us that they'll have the second. PNS will be submitting a proposal or a cost estimate, and then based on those costs, we'll be awarding the contract. Hopefully, will be under construction here in the next couple of months, March, April, before the rainy season.
Good.
The sidewalks, all of these sidewalks, Center, Flomish, Walker is on hold because concrete prices are through the roof. That's one. Two, I don't think we can find any contractor that their specialty is demolishing and putting sidewalks down and be able to do it in a short time that the school is out. So we put it on hold, and we have a lot of other things that we're getting busy with. 10th Street is in the same boat. All of the sidewalks are on hold. Okay?
All right.
That's it?
And then we have
Overhead.
CRA,
Oh,
Phase
the CRA.
3, overhead to underground.
Yes, here it is, sorry. Yeah, Phase 3 is on schedule. Phase 3, we already made asked FPL to start their plans. AT&T, we sent in the letter requesting them to start the plans, and we made a small payment to them. And Charter Communication, which is Spectrum basically, is they're starting the design. Also, I sent them communication to go ahead and with a deposit.
Antoine, is there any way to require all of the directional boring to be done at the same time?
Yes, what we're trying to do,
They
exactly.
hit the pipes over and over.
Yes, what happened is most of our AT&T and FPL used our conduits, the city that put down. We installed 2 more conduits, one for the city for future use, and one for Spectrum. Spectrum is the one who decided that they don't want to use the conduits. So now we're in early discussion with Spectrum to say, let's please use our conduits, and we're going to put tracers. Their concern is we don't know where everything is. We're going to put tracers on these conduits when we put them in the ground, so they'll be easier to find, and hopefully they will be used by their contractor. Their contractors, if everything goes to plan, there shouldn't be our contractor when they lay down the conduits, and that's it. And then we just have them troubleshoot if there's any issues in the field. So.
And that's speaking specifically about US 1. So I know that they're laying fiber throughout the city, and I know that
we have no.
they've hit
control
so
over.
many water pipes though.
Yep.
And so when that happens, is there any liability on them? Do they have insurance that we bill for that, or?
If we can prove that the locates have been completed and correct, and the damage that was caused by them, yes, we can. Right now, on a couple of them, it was FPL, but the project was a long, long time ago when they were doing the lighting, the pole replacements, a couple of years, 3-4 years ago. So I cannot definitely say it was FPL. The pipes are so deep, 9 feet, 10 feet, it's hard to determine if the damage was done by FPL or just nicked it. If they nicked it a little bit, all these are clay pipes. They don't just crack right away. It takes time and stress and everything. So we are watching everybody who has a right-of-way permit for us to do some work. If the damage, we're gonna go after them. We're taking pictures of the damage and asking them to compensate us for the repair.
Okay, great.
So also, Mayor, the letters for the easement acquisitions are prepared and ready to go out. We're just finalizing the easement documents and making sure that FPL is okay with them. And lastly, the right-of-way permit for the decorative lighting along Riverside Drive path has been, came in this
Yeah.
week. I signed off on the time extension because it's going to obviously exceed 60 days, and we're waiting for staff to review, and
It's actually, we already approved it, Joe. I reviewed it, Sean, and it's moving forward.
They're outside, doors are, front doors are all locked.
okay.
Can I go lock?
No, should take it.
Steve,
Susan will go.
Steve, can you open the front doors?
Thank you.
It should be open, yeah, we normally don't, Val's off today, this
Yeah.
afternoon, so we're a
Yeah,
little,
just looking, she said.
Thank you.
We have keys.
Yeah.
Steve has the key.
that'll be moving forward soon, too. So there's still a lot of good projects in process, some are delayed, some are more expensive. But again, I can make this document available to you every 2 weeks if it's something that you'd want to see. Otherwise, I'll have it in my office, we can talk about it. But between Michelle, Susan, Antoine, and Steve, they do a good job of keeping us all up to date on this stuff.
Yeah, and you keep us well up to date with it as well, so we appreciate that. And just very briefly, because we'll have to speak about it in a different workshop setting, the Sunrise Park improvements are very important to me, and I'm excited to go through that process to see, and we've talked about it before as a commission, to see what improvements we can make there to truly make it the world-class place that it truly is, so.
I would go so far, if we could, up to Steve Scott's okay with it, and do a mobile workshop and have the workshop at the park to talk about
Oh,
things
yeah.
in the park. If we
Just
can.
have it noticed and.
Have it noticed, we have a
the clerk
reporter
come.
there and the clerk
Yeah.
there.
Everyone walk barefoot.
Minutes. No, don't do that.
No, don't
Everyone
do
walk
that.
barefoot.
Yeah.
This way everybody's there and they can
No,
see and talk about
no,
it.
no.
Yeah. All right, and we'll discuss that more, but right now, we're 4 minutes away from the meeting, so we're going to take about a 5-minute break before the city commission meeting unless there's anything further for this workshop. Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.